I'm Margot LaGrega. How well we understand, interpret, and use numerical data are the skills that make up what is known as quantitative literacy. These skills are absolutely essential if we are to be well-educated people, valued members of the workforce, and good citizens. Our financial and political decisions, our understanding of science and technology, and our effectiveness in our careers are all related to our quantitative literacy. As a result, CUNY developed Task 2 of the CPE to evaluate your ability to read and interpret numerical data in graphic forms, such as pie charts, line graphs, bar graphs, and tables. Task 2 is the second of 2 tasks developed for the CPE. Task 1 is covered in another program. In this program, we'll look at the role that quantitative analysis plays in our daily lives and careers and see an example in the business world. We'll review the 4 major types of graphs and charts which you'll encounter and use. We'll then go over Task 2 in detail, including how it is scored and test-taking tips. CUNY faculty, including Professor Ken Anderson, an experienced teacher on preparing for the CPE, will take you through Task 2. We'll begin by looking at the role that numerical data plays in our everyday life and in our classwork.
One of the important lessons students learn in college is that data doesn't exist by itself. That data is generated by professionals and that it is to be analyzed by professionals.
Everything is data-driven for me. Almost every decision that I make, I would like to have some data to see whether or not it supports the thinking that I have.
Data is not just numbers. Data is a picture of the world.
Data is not the beginning and end to the process, because when you get the data, you must be able to interpret the data. And I can't think of one course at BMCC that is not data-driven, and that includes the humanities.
In speech class, we use visual aids. We show students how to do bar graphs, pie graphs, line graphs. I think it's said that an audience will actually understand and remember 8 times more if they also are receiving information visually. A picture is worth 1,000 words.
In the modern languages, we still do graph when we're studying the cultural aspects of the different countries that we're studying. We see graphs and we study population, we study religions, we study foods, we study exports, different things like that. So students are exposed to quantitative material with the graphs.
Analyzing charts and reading graphs is another important element that students pick up from the business curriculum. For example, they could be looking at another pie chart, which is showing what is the demographic mix of a certain population that they're trying to study. In doing so, they're picking up the skills that CPE requires them to have.
We'll now meet with Wesley Freeberg, a commodities dealer at the Mercantile Exchange. We'll see how he uses graphs and charts every day to make decisions in his work. The Mercantile Exchange is one of the great economic engines of New York City and the world, and is a place where many of our graduates from accounting and business majors can make a career.
The Mercantile Exchange is the nexus of the market. It's where the orders for buying and selling for actual commodities takes place and where they're executed. The Mercantile Exchange trades the energy complex, and the metals division of the Mercantile Exchange trades the precious metals and semi-precious metals. We have a saying called, "The trend is your friend. Don't buck the trend." The trend is best represented in terms of charts. You can see which direction things are moving by looking at charts and graphs. Gold has always been tied to currencies. Currencies are a store of value, but they are made out of paper. Gold traditionally has been something that has been a store of value that's backing up the paper. If the future value of the dollar is expected to decline, what is something that's not going to decline in this world when the dollar is declining? And that might be gold. So if I see that the dollar is rising very rapidly against the euro in the past 15 minutes, then maybe gold is going to be going down. And sometimes I'll place a bet that way. The analysis tools that I use, including all these charts that we've mentioned, line charts, pie charts, bar charts, and other analysis tools, are very important to me for food, clothing, and shelter.
Now that we have seen how numerical data is used in our everyday and work life, Professor Ken Anderson will go over how to read charts and graphs and the 4 different types which will come up on the CPE exam. What you might notice is how you yourself have already used some of these in your own studies.
If you flip through the textbook of your courses, such as political science, psychology, or economics, you will find that there are a variety of table charts and graphs contained in them. With any chart or graph, the first thing to look for is the title. The title tells you what the chart or graph is about. Next, look at where the information comes from. This is the source. This can help you to evaluate the usefulness and accuracy of the data. The chart's labels tell you exactly what variables the data are measuring. For example, is it dealing in time? What amounts are being used to measure the data? Is there a legend? The legend helps you to identify the categories the data are divided into. Finally, there is the actual values that the chart contains. Let's look at a variety of charts and graphs that can be used to present the same information. We will use the example of the annual per capita of milk consumption in the United States from the year 1970 to the year 2000. For those of you who may not be sure, per capita means per person. We will see that each type of chart or graph gives a different perspective on the same type of data. Here's a table of the milk data. Tables are used to show exact amounts of data. For example, this table shows the total consumption of all kinds of milk was 29.6 gallons in the year 1970. Pie charts, also known as circle charts, are used to compare parts to a whole. The circle represents 100%, and each portion within the circle stands for a part of that 100%. We can see that whole milk represented 84% of the total milk consumption in 1970 and 37% in the year 2000. But pie charts cannot show exact numbers, like the total consumption of whole milk in 1970 and 2000, the way that a table can. Bar graphs allow us to compare different variables within one time period, like the consumption of whole milk, reduced fat, and skim milk per capita in 1970, or one variable across all time periods like whole milk from 1970 to 2000. Finally, line graphs are used to show trends. We can see in this example that the consumption of whole milk has declined dramatically from 1970 to 2000, while the consumption of reduced fat and skim milk has increased. Another advantage is that we can see the point at which Americans were drinking the same amount of whole and reduced fat milk. You can learn more about graphs and charts in CPE workshops.
When I took the workshops on the graphs and charts for the CPE, it was helpful because I thought that, I would go in there and it would be simple, but there were a lot of things that I would have overlooked had I not sat in on that workshop.
Now let's go over Task 2 in detail. You do not need to remember everything, since all of it will be covered in CPE workshops, the CPE Student Information Booklet, online tutorials, and the CPE CD-ROM.
Task 2 tests your ability to understand and analyze information that is presented to you in graphic form, such as pie charts, line graphs, bar graphs, and tables, and your ability to use that information to verify statements that were made in a reading. This portion of the examination is 1 hour long, and it is worth 1/3 of your grade. You will be given a short reading, which is a few paragraphs long, and 2 different charts that will be called Figure 1 and Figure 2. You should assume that these all come from separate and independent sources. Your task is to find a minimum of 2 claims from the reading and determine whether or not the data from the figures support or challenges or partially challenged and supported those claims. A claim is a statement that is presented by the author as the truth. Your response may be in either paragraph form or in bullet points. Either format is acceptable. Remember, you will get in-depth information about Task 2, additional tips, and practice in CPE workshops.
When you first look at the graph, you're just like, what is this? What am I looking at? You don't know how to read it or what to look for, but the workshop tells you exactly what to look for.
you know, and once you go to the workshop, you're going to take that test and you're just going to read it and you're going to do well.
Just learn to read pie charts. If you read the New York Times, if you read Business Week, if you read Time Magazine, those are all great ways to not only better yourself and your knowledge base, but also it'll help you out in the future as well. And needless to say, it'll help you pass the CPE.
Now we'll look at how Task 2 is scored. You'll find you'll do well on Task 2 by understanding the scoring rubric, also known as the scoring guide.
Let's look at the Task 2 scoring rubric. You will receive one score ranging from 0 to 6 from each of the 2 independent readers based on your response. Let's look at what a 4 is. Remembering that a score of 4 indicates you have satisfied the basic elements of this task. A 4 means that you have accurately identified 2 claims from the reading selection and adequately explained the relationship of Figure 1 to one of these claims and Figure 2 to the other.
The way Task 2 is scored is that scorers look to see that what you have chosen is in fact a claim in the text, and to see whether you record the information from the figures and charts accurately. And thirdly, to see whether you explained that the information either supported or contradicted the claim statement. You are not required to write an essay for Task 2. You can present this in the form of bullets or a list of information. You do not have to write full essays.
Remember, most students do well on Task 2. Here are some easy tips you can follow. Read articles in newspapers or magazines which contain graphs and charts and look at them critically. Don't overlook graphs and charts in your assigned readings. When you see a graph or chart in your textbook, study it. Go to workshops that are tailored just for Task 2 where you can learn about this part of the exam. Read the CPE Student Information Booklet. At the exam, be sure to ask yourself these questions. Have you done everything the directions ask for? Have you interpreted the figures correctly? Does your response contain at least 2 claims from the reading? Have you accurately stated whether or not each claim is supported and/or challenged by a figure using a different figure for each claim? You can learn more about the CPE by logging onto your college website or contacting your CPE coordinator on campus. You can also look at the other 2 programs on the CPE. We hope you found this program useful. Good luck with Task 2. I'm sure you'll do great.